be a good option to look at. But Dr. David Romano is a Middle East expert, Middle East politics, and you've been a professor how long?
Oh, geez, I suppose it's been a bit over 20 years
Yeah,
now.
so 20 years, and you're the chair of which department?
I have a chair in Middle East politics based in the political science department at
Okay.
MSU.
Okay, very good. And I know that you take students over there to study, right?
Absolutely. I've taken students twice to Israel. The most recent time was in May, just this past May. I've taken students on three occasions to Turkey and on one occasion to Bosnia and Croatia.
Well, I tell you what, and Turkey, Janet and I were fortunate enough to go to Turkey as a state rep. We were invited by the Niagara Foundation that helps bridge the gap between America and the United States and Turkey, and but we paid our own way. I want to make sure that people knows that the trips I took in with the government, we made sure that we paid our own way over there. But we got to go to 6 different cities in Turkey, and it was just absolutely, the people were so great because we would eat at a different place each night, different parts of the society. It could be a lawyer, that could be an engineer that built roads. It could be two college professors, a young man and woman that were in their late 20s that hosted our group one night of representatives and senators. And it was just awesome. They taught English in Turkey. And so that was really good too. But what else do we need to know about your bio? Anything else that we need to know before we get started that you want to share with people?
Sure. I've lived in Israel about 2 years, about a year and a half in Iraq, about a total of 2 years in Turkey, and I've been throughout the eastern Middle East region, what we call the Mashrek in Arabic, which is like the Levant and so forth. I've been throughout that region, including Iran, Syria, and other states.
Well, one thing that's interesting to know, because I obviously we both speak English. Be debatable sometimes how well I can speak English, but and I know a little bit of Spanish and a little bit of French and Latin, but not like him. So listen to this, Dr. Romano. He can speak Hebrew, Turkish, Kurdish, French, which is one of your natural languages, and then a little bit of Arabic, and obviously English. So yeah, you know a few foreign languages. So I think that's pretty good too. So anyway, we had 4 slides, just 4 slides, and we weren't able to get them to work with the flash drive that we had. So extremely sorry about that. But I think you're gonna, if you'll listen and pay attention, you may want to have a pencil and paper out and make some notes. But we're going to just jump right into this. This is a topic that the entire world is watching right now. What's going on over in Israel? And I think, Dr. Romano, that we will start this out by just maybe if you could just tell us. I mean, these type of things have been going on for a long time over there. So can you give us a little history and background of what's leading up to these type of terrible things that are happening over in Israel and Middle East?
Well, sure. Although it depends how far back you want to go. I would say what we're seeing right now is the 1948 war that established Israel's independence and also created the Palestinian refugee problem. It's some actors are still trying to replay it. What happened was after that war, where Israel was at war with the Palestinian Arab population of the area, as well as the 7 Arab states that invaded and tried to expel the Jews from the area. Israel won that war. In the process, it created a Palestinian refugee problem of some 750,000 Palestinian refugees were created. And whereas refugees from anywhere else in the world, they fall under the United Nations High Commission for Refugees sphere, and they're resettled and given citizenship and allowed to go on with their lives somewhere else. the Palestinian refugees uniquely had their own special UN agency created for them, the United Nations Relief Works Agency, UNRWA, and they weren't resettled for the most part, given citizenship elsewhere. Instead, they were used as pawns to keep the conflict open, to keep it alive. And most of the population of Gaza are refugees. They're not originally from Gaza. They're from surrounding areas as far north as Jaffa near Tel Aviv and Lod and other locations. And they've been kept in limbo all these years. It's part of what led to the overcrowding of Gaza. And they've been told that they were going to succeed in, quote, liberating Palestine at some point in the future and allowed to return to where they originally lived, a kind of false hope and dream that's kept the conflict alive. And they've been rotting there in Gaza. They with not much in the terms of future prospects, and extremism allowed to breed, and unhappy living conditions. Israelis, in the meantime, absorbed some 850,000 Arab Jews expelled from Arab countries after the 48 war. And about half the Israeli Jewish population is actually Jews from the Arab countries who, in contrast to the Palestinians, were resettled and became full and productive members of Israeli society, but are not looking forward to a possible future where they're once again helpless minorities subject to the whims of Arab Muslim majority around them. And so we get to this conflict here where when Hamas launches an attack like it did last week, it's kind of like the 1948 war never ended for them, and they're trying to keep it going.
Well, I tell you what, and so one of the things I hear, so you can correct me anytime I say something that maybe not exactly correct, but I have a sense that the Palestinian people, that a lot of the people that live there are innocent people. That really they you're right. They may have been misled, and they're there, and they're kind of in limbo. But they just have a life too. They have families. They're not really people that want to create a war. And it looks like Hamas has got them in the middle, kind of caught in the middle of this terrible, terrible war that's broken out. That doesn't look like it's going to be over quite so soon. It looks like it's going to be something that's going to last for a while. So I feel sorry for them, and I know a lot of them are trying to flee, and Israel has sent out information for them to leave, because I think that if they don't leave, they're going to be in the middle of a lot of damage and potentially a lot of lives that are lost. So I know they're trying to leave, but they got problems because Egypt's not allowing people in, right? But we thought they were going to.
Yeah.
And so where do they go?
Most Palestinians in Gaza, of course, most of them are innocent civilians and just want to raise their families and get on with day-to-day life. But we have lots of indicators that show most of the population in Gaza would have liked to leave a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Egypt has never let them enter Egypt or go on with their lives there. Egypt was administering the Gaza Strip when it held onto that territory after the 48 war. Israel only captured it in 67. And unlike countries like Jordan, which took in many Palestinians and gave them citizenship, Egypt never allowed them in Egypt. Egypt reasoned it had its own problems and so forth. But that holds true even today. We have Palestinians trying to flee the fighting. Israel wants them out of the way so they can attack Hamas and try to eliminate Hamas and Islamic Jihad, which is obviously posing such a grave threat to Israelis. But Egypt's not letting the Palestinian population in. Egypt claims that they need to stay put where they are lest they lose their claims to their land. And this is where my point about going back to the 48 war comes again. They're not going to get to return to Israel proper. Yet they're being held there against their will, when really those who want to leave should be allowed to. and resettled elsewhere. Others who would like to stay should be at least temporarily evacuated so that they don't lose their lives, because the fighting is going to be extremely nasty if Israel invades, does a ground invasion to try to eliminate Hamas. Gaza is amongst the most densely populated areas on earth. And fighting a military conflict, for any of our listeners who have military experience in a densely populated urban zone with the combatants on one side indistinguishable from the civilians, this is going to be worse than Fallujah in 2005, 2004. And we need to get those civilians out of harm's way. So there really does need to be pressure on Egypt to at least take them in temporarily.
Originally I thought they were going to. I think the United States government felt like they were going to make an exception. They were going to help these people escape this war. I don't know how long they'd get to stay there, but I mean, now that with the door being shut, they're all they're just stacking up right there on the border, and they don't really have a place to go. And they're actually running out. Thank goodness we do have great humanitarian groups that are helping to bring food and water, and everything's been cut off. Power's been cut off over there on the Gaza Strip, but Hamas wants those people there. They're like shields, because Israel doesn't want to hurt innocent people. I know they don't, but if they're there. I know their probably number one mission probably is to try to get those hostages back,
right?
But they're using those people and the hostages as a shield in front of the enemy.
Absolutely. Ironically, the Hamas strategy for winning is to have as many civilian casualties as possible. And this is where the organization has a striking resemblance to ISIS. Like when we were fighting ISIS in Mosul or Raqqa, you'd have a building with, say, 6-story building, and ISIS would set up its offices on the first floor and have civilians on the next 5 floors above it, and not permit them to leave, reasoning that it would dissuade Allied forces from airstriking the building. We see the exact same playbook with Hamas and Islamic Jihad, and they're telling the civilians not to evacuate south, and often forbidding them from evacuating and leaving, because that's the playbook.
Well, and something that I'm sure that a lot of our listeners and viewers have heard yesterday on the news. I'm sure you have heard it, Doctor, that we had an unfortunate happening yesterday where a hospital full of medical teams, doctors, nurses, all the people that makes a hospital run, along with a lot of patients and people, were in a hospital on the Gaza Strip, and it got hit by a missile and pretty well destroyed the hospital and killed several hundred people and injured many, many people. And now the Hamas people are saying that it was a missile from Israel. I don't believe that. Israel denied it. They're saying they don't believe it either. Israel's military might and army is pretty good, isn't it? I mean, it's a pretty well trained army. They know what they're doing. They're military. They know what they're doing, and and they've been strategically hitting certain buildings on the Gaza area, Strip area. But I can't see them. I can't see them doing that, because that's not the Israel people, that they're going to hit those innocent people. I really believe it's either an accidentally missile that went wrong, that the enemies of Israel was trying to send over to Israel, or maybe they did it on purpose and trying to blame and cause a lot of confusion right now.
You're absolutely right that Israel has zero interest in targeting a hospital and causing that kind of 500 civilian casualties. To the contrary, this is how Hamas wins, by getting international sympathy for their cause over Israel's. And it hurts Israel to have every single civilian casualty occur. Now, we have footage, we have independent footage and videos that the Israelis have released actually showing what appears to be a rocket fired from the ground in Gaza, going off course and exploding above the hospital, and then like half a second later, there's the explosion in the hospital, and then another one curving around and hitting the hospital. And the Israelis are saying their intelligence shows that it was an Islamic Jihad missile squad that misfired. And they've shown the evidence to U.S. officials, including President Biden. And it looks fairly convincing that this was, in fact, a Islamic Jihad rocket squad. And what's important to know is Islamic Jihad was firing these rockets into Israeli civilian centers. They were actually hoping they hit an Israeli hospital or some other Israeli civilian installation, because they fire them blindly into Israeli population centers. And this is part of the threat that Israel has to deal with. Israel's not going into Gaza to like wreak vengeance on the entire Palestinian population there. That has never been their goal. They're going there to eliminate the obvious threat posed by Hamas and Islamic Jihad, a threat that they feel they had underestimated until Saturday, October 7th, when they swarmed over the border and killed some 1,200 Israeli civilians in the most gruesome possible ways in just the course of a day.
So that leads me to a comment and question. As Israel has always been prepared, and they've got this tremendous missile system that knocks the missiles out of the air. They're what do they call that? The
Iron Dome.
Iron Dome. I mean, a tremendous system, and they're always on guard. You'd think. I mean, they always have been, but they did get slipped up on this time. I'm not exactly sure. Even U.S. intelligence. I mean, I don't think anyone really knew, but they've been preparing for quite some time on this. So I don't really know exactly how that happened. Do you have any ideas about how that actually that Saturday, October 7th, that we get started in this, and how did Israel? It's almost like everyone was asleep.
A lot of Israelis are asking exactly that question. How could this have happened? How could they be caught so much with their pants down, so to speak? And so far from the information we see is that, first of all, Hamas has been preparing this for a long time, but it becomes background noise. Hamas is always training for something, even out there in the open. And with time, the same drills that Hamas is doing and training stuff out in the open are just become background noise, and Israeli intel doesn't think more of it. And then we have the issue that a lot of Israeli troops were diverted elsewhere. It was a holiday once again, just like 50 years ago with the Yom Kippur War. This time it was the end of Sukkot, the kind of a harvest festival in Judaism. So some troops had leave. And then other troops appear to have been diverted to the West Bank, where tensions were rising due to settlements over there, and the current Israeli government's perhaps more hawkish approach to settlements there. They diverted troops from what turned out to be the greater threat, which was on the Gaza border, and a lot of Israelis are really upset with their government about that. The response was slow and botched, and obviously the border was insufficiently manned. And so this was, Hamas is describing it as quite a coup. And I was stunned to see those who are like extremely pro-Palestinian celebrating the attack on October 7th, not just because of the tremendous loss of innocent human life, but anyone should have known how Israel would have to respond to that kind of attack, how any state would respond to that kind of thing.
Sure.
And so now we're seeing the flip side of the coin with all the innocent lives in Gaza being lost. These aren't things to celebrate. It's not a football match or something.
I don't think there's anything to celebrate when you're in war.
Exactly.
And so what we're talking about catching Israel off guard, I mean, at some point in time, once this war is over with, then I think the people of Israel and the government of Israel are going to have to get together and figure out how did that happen? Because you learn from your mistakes. If you don't learn from your mistakes, you're in trouble. I know Israel will learn from their mistakes, and hopefully they can destroy Hamas enough that this will preserve maybe freedom and peace for many, many years, because this could drag other countries into this very easily, very easily.
There's a
But
big
before we
risk.
talk about that, I want to, since you're a college professor, and we were just talking about this, we didn't have a lot of time before the show started, but I was interested to know Missouri State University. What we have, about 30 some thousand students.
Yep, about 30,000.
Yeah, so I mean, a great sized university with lots of different curriculums and programs, PhD, master level, all kinds of bachelor programs. But you didn't really have in Springfield, Missouri. You didn't really have a lot of students that was protesting like you see on TV, where big universities are having hundreds and hundreds of people protesting against Israel, telling them that they don't want them to retaliate and things like that. We didn't have that in Springfield, Missouri, did we?
We didn't. Protests are fine generally, but the protests that emerged on some campuses right after Israel was attacked by Hamas, like on the next day, on Sunday, October 8th, this is before Israel had moved its troops to strike Gaza and try to eliminate Hamas. So it just very much looked like a protest celebrating the mass slaughter of Israeli civilians, and that's beyond tone deaf.
Right.
At MSU, we haven't had protests on this side or that side. What I've seen of the students that we have is they're genuinely interested in just understanding the conflict,
Right.
and they're curious about it. They're not taking simplistic partisan sides in the conflict, and they're really just wanting to learn the ins and outs. And I think anyone who takes a look long enough at a conflict like this one will see how it's a tragedy, really, for both. Well, there's more than two sides as well, but for all the actors involved. And if I've done my job right as a professor, I've explained to the students why each actor does what they do, what's motivating them, and it's a bit harder to be completely partisan once you understand that better.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about Iran and you lived in Iran a couple of years, you said.
Oh no, I visited Iran.
Visited Iran. Sorry,
I lived in Iraq, and
Iraq,
Israel, and Turkey.
So I don't know that one of the things that they're talking about now is how involved other countries were, like Iran and stuff like that. That'll be interesting to see because for our standpoint in this country, obviously our country's government and most of the people in this country are going to stand for Israel. We're going to support Israel. We're going to do whatever we need to do to protect Israel and the people in Israel. One of the things I'm a little disappointed, and it's not your fault at all, that we didn't get those 4 slides, because one of the interesting things I'm going to encourage people, while you're watching this show, sometime just Google the Middle East and look at the size of Turkey. So one of the things that Dr. Romano had said on one of the slides he sent me was we had the picture of the United States, and so we know the size of our country when you look at all 50 states. And we have about 330 million people in our country. And so you see all those states, and you see how big Texas is, and some California, you see the big states and stuff like that. And then Doctor had Israel. And Israel looked like maybe like an ink spot, just a kind of little ink blot in kind of the middle part of the United States, a little bit more to the right. But I just noticed how small that looked. And how many people does Israel have?
About 10 million.
About 10 million.
Population.
Okay, put that into perspective, because Missouri has about 6.2, 6.5 million. So Missouri, and we're so much bigger country, land size compared to Israel, but just that puts that into perspective. And then I just want all the Christians, and then the people that are non-Christians that's watching our show, read your Bible and talk and study what God has said about Israel, and how God will protect Israel, and how God will strike the countries and people that want to destroy Israel. That's just what the Bible says. So if you believe in the Bible, then I think you'd have a different standpoint. I'm really proud that Missouri State, and I know we have some private colleges like Drury University. We have schools that kids come from all over the country to go to Drury University, Evangel University, a Christian university. Tremendous people come from everywhere to go to Evangel University, but our students basically. Now, we've had some socialist groups downtown Springfield that I imagine they're everywhere. They've had little rallies against Israel just since this time has happened, but they don't muster up a big crowd and things. And you're right, David. So everyone has a right to protest. You know, you have a right to protest. You have freedom of speech. That's what makes our country so great, is that we do have those freedoms. We have the Constitution. We have the Bill of Rights. We have the protections that we have that so many countries don't have in the world. But I do. One of the reasons I wanted Dr. Romano on the show today is because I want people to be a little bit more educated. I know I'm going to be more educated just listening to him because we need to know. You need to know the real reasons why things are going on. So what do you think? I mean, so the war started October the 7th, basically October 7th, 8th, and now here it is the 18th. So we're about 10 or 11 days into this. No way to know how long this is going to last. I think Israel's prepared to make it last as long as they need to make it last to try to get rid and eradicate all of the enemies on the Gaza Strip area, right?
There's certainly Prime Minister Netanyahu warned the Israeli public on the first day after the attack that this could take some time. By the same token, Israel has mobilized some 300,000 reservists because with a small population, most of the country's military forces are actually reservists. The standing army isn't that big. There is a question how long they can keep that many reservists away from their regular jobs and there on the Gaza border. There's also a big question of how long the civilian population of Gaza can continue on like this. We're running out of water supplies, food supplies, medicine, and they're stuck, and they're stuck in the middle here. These people generally don't want to be in Hamas. They don't want to be caught in the crossfire. And again, I think a lot is up to Egypt. It needs to let them in so that we can get them out of harm's way. But it's not clear really how many options Israel has. It may need to go in with a ground invasion if it's going to really try to disarm Hamas and Islamic Jihad and make sure that this doesn't happen again in the foreseeable future.
Well, and I don't know that much about what their military operation is going to be like, but it looks like to me, you're right, 300 to 330,000 is what they've reported that they've got lined up there. And I thought it was interesting. I watched out of the Springfield airport on the news that we have people from Israel that are going back and been called up, and so they're leaving all over wherever they live. They're leaving and coming back to fight. And I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to just see people and their families saying goodbye to their husband or son or brother or whatever, and they're going back, and it's all being staged. I think there'll be some morning when we wake up, and or maybe before we go to bed at night, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, and I think again most people are for it. I don't understand. We got some U.S. Congress people and maybe U.S. senators, different people that have said, well, Israel shouldn't retaliate. They should just let it be. Don't keep killing people. Well, I don't think that works that well. because you're never going to end anything if you're going to continue to let people strike and kill you and kill babies and kill older parents and just all ages and do what they did and just mowing those people down at that concert. Watching the film news clips of young people at a concert. Just imagine what this country would feel like that if your child was at a concert and there was hundreds of people at that concert, and all of a sudden people started coming in and just killing everybody, just killing everyone that's at that concert, trying to kill everyone. Few people escaped. That would probably create a war, wouldn't it?
Well, the tragic irony here is that Israel had been trying to loosen up on the embargo on Gaza. It had been, since Hamas took over, Israel has put a partial embargo on Gaza since 2007. It completely withdrew from Gaza in 2005. And since 2007, Israel strictly limited anything that might be considered a dual use material that Hamas could use for weapon systems or fortifications. And it was only food, medicine, and electricity that was allowed in, which contributed to the misery in Gaza. Also, Egypt has a border with Gaza and maintained the same kind of restrictions. And Israel had begun easing up on that and allowing more and more Gazan day laborers to come into Israel, giving them permits and so forth, trying to make conditions in the Strip better. And Israel was being told by Europeans and others that Hamas was more interested in governing the Gaza Strip than restarting the conflict and so forth. So this was also part of the reason that their guard had been let down. And then we have this occur, and they're not sure what to do with it. Now, of course, we would all benefit from a larger resolution of the whole conflict, but that kind of negotiated outcome, for one thing, can't be achieved with Hamas. Hamas's charter from 1988 is very clear. There's no negotiations. There's no compromise. It has to be 100% of Palestine returned, that's the land from the river to the sea, returned to Muslim Waqf control. An Islamic State has to be built there. And there's even a passage talking about hunting down Jews wherever they may be hiding, even behind rocks and trees, where the rocks and trees will betray them and so forth. So it's a kind of genocidal charter that Hamas has. There's no negotiations with Hamas, and the hope was that, with more moderate Palestinian groups like the Palestinian Authority based in the West Bank, which Hamas ejected from Gaza and killed several hundred of their people in the process, that you could arrive at a negotiated solution. But that's been eluding us still. We're not sure. The expansion of settlements in the West Bank of Israelis who set up homes there has been a major irritant for Palestinians hoping for a state of their own on that territory. And so everyone seems stuck in a status quo that's clearly impossible.
Well, we're going to continue to talk about that. So we're going to just take a very short, do not go away. I just got two sponsors I want to really highlight because this show is brought to you because we do have sponsors. I was talking to Dr. Romano that I am blessed and we have the equipment we have to provide this show around the world. But on the other hand, we're trying to still raise money to where I could have a phone system. Wouldn't it be great for people watching today, listening today, to be able to call in and talk to Dr. David Romano and ask him a question? So I'm used to my talk show on another area of Springfield where for 7.5 years I had 10, 14 people calling in every week on a talk show. So that's what my dream is here, is to be able to have some equipment to where people can call in and talk to our guests, and we have communication, two-way communication. I encourage you to send emails into Acts Ministry Group at headquarters and send us and make comments right now if you want to, and we'll try to respond to you after the show. But we do appreciate you watching us today. So Brad Pistow is our first sponsor that we had. He's a certified fiduciary financial planner located right in Ozark, Missouri. His phone number, extremely important, 417-581-9222. Okay? 417-581-9222. When you call that number, Lisa or Hunter or Brad will answer the phone, and they will send you a book called either Safe Money Matters. That's his first book he wrote. And it is a #1 best-selling retirement planning book. And then he wrote last December, he published his second book called Bulletproof. You can get one or both of those. He's licensed in several states, but he is a contributor for USA Today on the money section about retirement planning. He goes all around the country and speaks, and he has friends in all 50 states, associates. And so if he's not licensed in your state, he can hook you up with the right people. I use him. My family uses him. Don Blackard's family uses him. We don't have sponsors on this show that we would not use ourselves, because I am so careful to make sure that we use sponsors that will do the right thing for their customers. So Brad Pistow, Trinity Insurance and Financial Services, located right in Ozark, Missouri. Okay. Our second sponsor that I want to highlight today, and we just had John Whittaker. He's the owner of now the new Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia. Used to be called Youngblood Motor Group. They've been in business now as long as anybody in Southwest Missouri is a car dealership. They've been in business over 43 years. That's a long time selling cars. And they have two different car lots. They have new cars on this one side of South Campbell in Springfield. That's where the Springfield Nissan, Springfield Kia headquarters are. Across the street, they have a lot of used cars. A lot of those are certified used cars. There's a big difference between certified and a used car, and they specialize in certified cars. And they usually have over 100 selections that you can choose from. So John Whittaker is a tremendous man that does lots of public and charity type things for people. And that's why I've always loved the Youngblood Motor Group. And now John Whittaker has bought out John Youngblood. My last two cars came from these guys, and my third car will come from them that I've bought over the last few years, because I believe in them and want people to check them out. Their telephone number is 882-3838, 417-882-3838 on South Campbell in Springfield, Missouri. So that's our two sponsors and that I want to highlight today. So we're going to get right back into our show. And as I said, I really appreciate that, and I hope that you're enjoying this show. So now we're kind of getting to, I really think, the hard part, but actually the most important part. You kind of alluded to it. You know, this is not going to be easy. I actually really believe that Israel will succeed because I know they're determined and they have the manpower and the firepower to do it. I think that Hamas has underestimated the will and the power of Israel. And I think they punched the bear, so to speak. And so they're going to get it. And I mean, I don't want to take sides necessarily, but I think they deserve it. You know, when somebody's just being provoked and attacked like they were, they're going to retaliate. I don't know what the U.S. Congress people are saying, that, oh, well, just forgive and forget and let it go. And then you're saying, well, they'll never quit. They'll never quit. So maybe you have to eliminate them enough, your enemy enough to stop these type of things. So maybe it may take 50 years or it may take longer. Who knows? But maybe it'll take a long time for them to build back up to where they could do this again. I think so. The whole idea is to try to, it looks like to me, to try to eliminate these guys where they're not going to be able to do it again. Is that what you see Israel trying to do?
Yes, I think the Israeli plan is to go in and, first of all, to kill as many Hamas fighters as they can, but most of all to find their arm depots, their workshops, or they've been building the missiles and so forth. They're supplying command centers, and then at least temporarily hold Gaza long enough to uncover the smuggling tunnels that they've been using to get Iranian weapons supplied to them, tunnels that go under the border with Egypt, and to basically remove their ability to keep supplying themselves with the weapons of war that they've used against the Israelis so devastatingly last week. And then I don't think Israel has an interest in occupying Gaza for a long time or staying there. That's just a continuous headache. It's why they withdrew in 2005. But at the same time, they just cannot tolerate this kind of threat and the continual rockets. The Hamas strategy seems to be to make life unlivable in Israel, so that its best and brightest emigrate out, and eventually the country collapses, in which case every Jewish person from the river to the sea will be massacred, as we saw that intent very clearly last week, if we didn't already know it from Hamas's charter. That much said, the rest of the population in Gaza could really benefit from someone else than Hamas running Gaza, whether it's a Arab League force or if the Fatah, Palestinian Authority from the West Bank, is put back in control, then we could see a loosening of import-export restrictions and travel restrictions, and maybe they could look forward to a more normal life as well.
So there are some positive things. I mean, so as Israel eliminates their enemy and
but
they didn't choose to do
they've
that.
been building
And
tunnels.
so we do need to eliminate those tunnels and things like that. But I do believe I do believe that my own personal conviction is I believe God is in control of everything. We don't know. We don't know exactly how it's going to end, and many times, whatever the issue is, we have certain ways that we want it to end. But I think in this particular case, Israel will prevail, and so I see better times ahead, because I don't think Israel really wants to control that Gaza Strip forever. So we get the right government in there and let those people live their life and Israel live their life. I think we'll be better off. But we all got to keep an eye on it, because we don't want this to go into World War III. This could go into World War III, and I don't think anyone intends that. But hey, thank you very much. You're a difference maker. You're being the change. That's what Don Blackard says. I appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, tune in next week. We'll have another great show, and have a great rest of the week.